Hey guys, Chris Dick here. Thought today I would do a full install of Hadoop, and there is latest version of Hadoop. It is 2.9.0. Some of the last videos I did were with 2.73, and there has been some changes, although minor. I thought I would just update and show you. Now, in this installation, some of the other things that people have asked me to do is, can I do a full install of Ubuntu right up to the end of using Hadoop? And so I thought, yeah, why not? Let's do the whole thing and all in one video and see how it goes. So this will probably take about 20 or 30 minutes. I am going to cut out some of the things that are perhaps not necessary, like watching the install go. But so I will show you where to get the files. I'll show you what settings to use, and then we'll get running our virtual machine. So the first thing that you'll need is VMware Workstation Pro. Get the latest version. I have 14 Workstation Pro installed, and it is quite good for what I need it to do. Um, and the other thing you will need right off the bat here, of course, is you're going to need your Ubuntu desktop. You can use the server version, but because I use some of the GUI tools to do things, you may find it better to just go along with whatever I have until you're confident with what you're looking at for. So from here, you'll click on download to get the Ubuntu. Scroll down to the bottom. If you prefer to offer a donation, feel free. Go to Not Now, take me to the download if you don't choose to do your donation. I would if I were you, if you want to keep this great resource going. Um, Once this pops up here, you're going to see a file name. This is the Ubuntu desktop 64-bit. It is an ISO file, okay? So that's kind of like a big zip file for a DVD. Save that to where you feel you can find it again easily. I'm just going to cancel because I already have it downloaded. Once you've got that downloaded, we are going to you're going to install the VMware workstation, and once you have that up and running, you can go through this process as well. So from here, we're going to create a new virtual machine. All right, now we're going to use the typical settings. I'm not going to be changing any processors, but I will give it some more memory. We go to typical. You'll see my disk image is already in my text box here. I can continue on. I don't need to provide any more information. Now here is where your virtual machine needs to have its name, and I'm going to call this Ubuntu. You could call it whatever you choose, Ubuntu, Hadoop, whatever. Um, and I'm going to also just continue on with the theme of Ubuntu with password and confirm. Everything in this box is Ubuntu, so nothing fancy. All right, so I'm going to call this virtual machine Hadoop, and why don't we call it name node? Okay. The only reason I'm calling it name node here is because, of course, this is a single node cluster or a single node setup. Every Hadoop needs a name node, and it uses SSH to communicate with itself in this way. If we have more nodes, we would call them data nodes. If you notice in my list down the side here, I have one called Hadoop Master, and that's another way to name it. So you can feel free to name this whatever you like. We'll click Next. And in this case, my path already exists. Well, that's fine. That's because I've got something already there. So I'm going to do Hadoop name node 290. In other words, this is 2.90. We'll just do that. Okay. Now, my maximum disk size that I'm giving it is 20 gigs. That should be more than enough. From what I can tell, it seems to take up maximum 15 gigs, not very much at all. We'll click next. We'll keep all the virtual disk space to multiple files. We click next. Now from here, we're going to customize the hardware. The hardware, in this case, it starts off with 1 MB. Okay. What it is suggesting though is that I can put up to 12.6 gigabytes. All right, and I am going to take 1 MB and multiply it by 12. Whoops, got to do the right math, I guess. Okay, times 12. There we go. So it's 12,288, which is basically 12.2 gigabytes. I'm going to put that in there. Now I'm just a stickler, and I've always I sort of keep with the multiples of 1024. You can do the same. There's nothing wrong with that, or you can just pick 12,000 if you want. Really doesn't make too much of a difference in this case. But what you do want is to give it enough RAM so that while you're running processes, it will your machine will still have enough memory to do what it needs to do. At this point, we're not doing anything terribly memory intensive. Okay. In here, if you have a system that supports multiple processors and core processors, this machine I have chose is a sort of a low-end laptop, one of these $700 models, and I wanted to show you on a laptop like this because not everybody has something fancy. So I don't have the ability of using more processors at this point. So I'm going to click on close. And if I click finish here, it will take me through the install process. I'll do that right now, but I'm going to stop that install and carry on the video from that point. But I wanted to get you to the point where you're seeing it, okay? And what you're seeing right now is it's going through the process of installing the Ubuntu. So what I am going to do is I'm just going to shut it down because I've already got a node ready to go, and I don't really need to go through the whole process. Okay. Now the other thing that we're going to do here is we're going to make some adjustments to the virtual machine settings. Okay. The settings in particular that I'm interested in are shared folders. Okay. Now we want to go into the settings and then go to Options tab and shared folders. We want to make that always enabled, and we want to find a folder location that you are going to allow for sharing of all of your files to your virtual machines. So in my case, I have a folder called virtual machines / shared folder. Now you'll also notice that here that it says the name is shared folder. Okay, what I suggest, you'll notice it has a space there. Let's just get rid of the space. It makes application development a little more difficult when you start introducing spaces. So we're just going to keep it very simple and use the name shared. All right. So from here, we click next. We will enable this share. Click finish. And the other thing we want to just double check is our guest isolation. Make sure that enable drag and drop is available and copy and paste are available. All right. We'll click OK. Okay. Now on my I have my Hadoop master all set up here, and I've got it as a fresh install. One thing that you do want to do once you have fully installed or completed your Ubuntu install, okay, what you need to do is shut it down and then come back and take a snapshot. Okay, so just like this. All right, you right click, go to snapshot, take snapshot, and we're going to say fresh install. Okay. Now what that does is it takes a snapshot of your virtual machine at it's at this period in time. Okay, that way if something goes wrong, you can always go back and get and restart, and and nothing has happened. Okay, very, very important. Take snapshots as we go, and I'll try to remember to do that as I'm doing this video. So let's get started here. We'll go into our virtual machine and power it on. Mine, the one that I created previously, is Hadoop Master. So I'm going to use that one, and we're going to power up. Okay, we're up and running here, and I'm going to log in. Oops, I got to spell right. All right, we'll log into this. Okay, now one of the things that I did when I first installed this operating system is I just kind of removed a few of the unnecessary icons. So you may want to do the same at this point. The other thing that you may want to consider is to add the terminal command line to your launchpad as well. And to do that, you hit Control Alt T, which will bring up a terminal window. All right, and then when you add it or when it appears, you'll see over here. It's right now it says unlock from launcher, but you will see lock to launcher. All right, and that's how you add it. So it would be a good idea because you're going to be using it quite often. Otherwise, you can just continue using the command line. All right, so from here, what we're going to do is install our VMware tools. And the reason we're doing that is because it has a bunch of features that allow us to share folders and cut and paste and all the rest. Most of it is pre-installed, but there are some features that are just not inherently available to us. So you'll see here it either will say install VMware tools or reinstall VMware tools. I'm going to click on reinstall. Now what this is going to do is mount a DVD drive for us. Okay, and I'm going to go over to my website here, and I'm going to grab some of the commands that are needed. You can certainly go to this website and follow the same instructions. We have just gone through the first set of instructions for setting up your shared folders. The next set, what we're going to have here is to install our VMware tools. So I'm going to copy this script here, and I go back down and paste it in. Okay. Now that's going to extract to the desktop. All right. So with that, we should have our VMware tools on the desktop. Okay, and that extracted a bunch of files into that. All right. Now from here, because what we can do now is I can go down to my web page again, and we can copy that, and we can go back over to our terminal, paste, and run that tool. Okay. Now, during this installer, it's going to ask you a bunch of questions. If you just feel free to go through the default answers. Don't worry about what it's saying. It has nothing to, there's nothing to be too concerned about. There will be a couple things that will come up that I may have to say yes to during config, and I will address that as soon as it comes up. So let's just keep moving along. Okay, now here's the one that I'm talking about. I'm going to overwrite the config by saying yes. I'm going to overwrite this configuration as well, and I'm going to overwrite that configuration. That's just pushing in new values into this the configuration files. So this takes just a couple minutes to initialize. Okay, so now it's asking about using the shared folders, and this is exactly what we were just setting up. So yes, we do want to make sure that we have shared folders available. Kernel modules, sure, why not? Driver-free printing, why not? All right. Remember, this is just a dev test environment, so don't get too hung up on security and whether something's going to break while you do this, because you can certainly always revert to your fresh install if something does go wrong. So let's just wait for this boot image to be finished, and once it's ready, we can continue on with our installation. In the meantime, we'll just go over to the website here, and this step here, okay, this is what we've kind of just gone through, because the new install actually has all those features available anyhow. So it kind of helps that we've gone through this process anyway, because now we don't necessarily need it. Okay. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to copy this command. And by the way, that last one I was talking about was number 7. So we'll go through that. We'll paste this one here. Now what this one does is it just asks for the configuration of the shared folder that we set up earlier in settings, okay? All right. Now what it's supposed to reply back is the name of the shared folder. If it didn't exist, then it would reply back with nothing. It would be empty. Okay. The next step, we're going to create a symbolic link on our desktop to those shared folders. All right. We do that, run that command, and now we have a shared folder that was not available there before. This shared folder has all of my scripts that I use that are actually on my local system now. Okay. Okay. So next step I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a reboot. Okay. You're going to want to get used to doing this stuff. So you just type sudo reboot, and that'll reboot our system here and allow us to move forward. All right, so the next step we're going to get into, once this thing is updated, we're going to install Hadoop. There's a couple things that we have to do before that, and a couple suggested things to do, such as updating packages on your server. So we will wait for the system to reboot, but we'll install the packages, and then we'll also update our Java Developers Kit. So let's go back over to Hadoop here, or our Ubuntu. Okay, we've rebooted, and now we'll log in. Okay, we're up and running again. So we will just close up some of these messages here. We don't need them. All right, close up some stuff that's not necessary. There we go. All right, so we've got our shared folder. Because now we've installed our VMware tools, we don't need this folder anymore. So we'll just move that to the trash, and we'll just empty that. Just get rid of it all, and make sure we're all good to go. Okay. So now let's go into our terminal window. And again, that's Control-Alt-T if you want to know. Once our terminal window is up, we're going to run this update. Okay. We right-click here, paste it, and we run our update. Okay, that can take a couple minutes to install. Sometimes it takes a longer, but it could be the speed of your computer, could be a variety of things. I'll pause while this does its work. Okay, so that updated everything nicely, no glitches. So we will move on to our Java install. So we're going to take down the Java default JDK from our apt-get, and just click on that. It should be fairly quick to install. It says, do I want to continue with pulling down this file? And I say yes, or just reply to the default. You don't have to do anything. You could type yes if you want, but it's not necessary. Okay, so we've got our Java installed, and what we would want to do right now is just double check that we actually have the right folder installed, and we're going to see what's actually there. Okay, so Click that. And we're in our JVM now. Okay. So from this point here, that just tells us that yes, we've got a JVM installed. If I type ls, you'll see that we have three folders here. One is default Java, and then the other one is Java 1.8, and then an actual folder of Java 8. So what these two light blue ones here are they're the symbolic links related to what was installed today. And the benefit here of having this symbolic link is that, especially for Hadoop, I can always just point a symbolic link to this Java install, and it really doesn't make any difference where else in my network this Java install is. It just knows that it is linked to this default Java. So as long as it's a Java version that it can use, Hadoop will be fine with that. Okay. Now the next part that we will do here is we're going to do some editing in our bash files. So bash.bashrc is a file that gets run when any bash processes get executed. And when we start up our machine, what we want to do is just automatically give the Java home variable visibility to everybody that uses the system. Okay, just one less thing to set up. So we can paste this command in, and we'll do this here. So in fact, you can go into the bash file and make the edits. Now I'm going to show you. There's two things that I've got here. I've got one here where you can open the file, edit, paste this information in. Okay. Sometimes people don't like to just let the system do that. Okay. Um, and we just save that, and we can just paste it and push it to the bottom. That way the variable is available. Okay. All right. Now the bunch of code that's here, however, if you use this method, it will give you the ability of just running those two lines, and it'll push it in for you without having to open the file. I tend to like that method. It's a little more interesting, but not typically very easy to read. So I just wanted to give you the heads up on how that works. All right, we'll copy our reboot code and then reboot, and we should be ready there. Okay, so we're ready to go on to our next step. Now we've installed Java. So what we want to do is just double check that we've got the right version of Java. So we'll just launch another terminal window, paste in java-version. That will tell us what version we have installed. And it tells us that we have 1.8 installed. That is the one that we downloaded. So we're pretty much on the right track so far. The next thing is to confirm that we have a Java home variable. This one is useful for when we're doing our Hadoop installation. So we type echo home, and this is the variable that we place in our bashrc file. Okay, it is not a real-time variable. In other words, it's not going to just tell us, hey, what's the default folder of our Java executable. This is the one that we physically placed into that file. There are ways of creating dynamically updated variables for it, but we won't get into that in this demonstration. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a user and group for Hadoop. All right. Now, the reason we do this is because essentially your Ubuntu user would be kind of like an average user, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add our Hadoop user to a special group called Hadoop, and that way anybody that we add to this group will have availability to use our Hadoop processing. Okay. So let's get started here. We'll click on copy that and we'll move into this. We'll add a group called Hadoop. Okay. And we just put in our password. We now have a group called Hadoop. That's a user group, by the way, and this is the output here. We're going to add a new user called HD user. Okay. And it's going to ask us some questions. I'm going to put in HD user as my password. You could do whatever you choose. Full name, empty. All these ones will be empty. Okay. Is this information correct? We'll just push enter because that will be our default. Okay. Now, the next line here is this is just telling us what we did here. Next one, we're going to add HD user to a sudo group so that we can run sudo commands. All right. Good. We've done that now. And let's just make sure that we have a user. So we'll switch user using the su command and HD user. And there we have it. Okay. If you notice, I was under Ubuntu at Ubuntu. Now I am logged in as HD user at Ubuntu. Okay. All right. Let's reboot our system once more. We've made a few alterations. What I want to do now is log back in as my new HD user, and we're going to continue with the Hadoop install from there. Okay, so as you see here, we now have an HD user available to us. So I'm going to log in as that one. All right, so if you see now, we have a different desktop. So I'm going to just do what I did with the other desktop. I'm going to take away some of those things that we don't need. And here I can show you that terminal window edition as well. I click on Control Alt T. That will bring up my terminal window. Lock that to the launch bar, and now it's going to be available for me anytime I need it. All right, so we're logged in as HD user at Ubuntu. The next step is to install passwordless SSH. I do have some videos on this as well, so you can, if you are confused on this, you can watch those videos. They're a little older, so this one will be slightly updated. Obviously, it's a year later, but I think it would be valuable to note. So from here, I'm going to paste our apt-get install. We're going to install the SSH server. Okay, now sometimes what happens is we get a lock file on our folders, and at times you have to remove that lock. So it's really hard to say why these things come up, but I did place some code in there to unlock those files. Hopefully it will correct our problem here. We'll see. And it did. So by doing that, we just released that file, and now we can continue on. So if you get that problem, you can do two things. You can try to restart or just run that command there. Sometimes I get that, and I really haven't figured out why it comes up. So sometimes it's just better to learn how to deal with it. Okay, just widen that up. Now the next thing that we're going to be doing is once our install is finished, we're going to generate an RSA key. So this is our private key that you're generating here, or public-private keys, excuse me, and we're going to be putting this file will end up in our .ssh folder, and I'm going to show you where that is because right now it's hidden and secreted away. So from here, if I click on our file manager, okay, what we see right now is a bunch of these public visible folders. But if I press Control H, it now shows me these other files. Bash RC and profile, these are files that we will be editing later on. Today we don't need it. Oops, I loaded up one. We don't need that one yet. Okay, but these files we will be working with later on, right? And just to show you, there is no .ssh folder yet. We will be creating that one once our process is installed here. So now we've got our SSH installed. I'm going to run the key creation process. This is just a SSH key gen, and we simply do this. Just push through it, and it will create a generated code just like this. All right. Now, if we go back over to our file manager, what we now see is this SSH folder. Check in here. We want to open that up just to see what it is. And what we have is our private key that is related to our computer. Okay. And this pub folder, I'm going to load that up with something else here. I'm going to just load it up with gedit. Okay, there we are. And this key here is the one that's the most important for us. That's the information that gets passed around. Okay, and that is related to the HD user, by the way. Good. Okay, so moving on, we now move into a phase of copying the RSA security to the SSH folder. All right. Now, this is the new and recommended way, and I think I'm going to continue on with the new and recommended way. I've had some issues with this one in the past, so you're welcome to do that one. This is what a lot of other people do, but this seems just a little more sexy, so I'm going to keep going with that one. All right, we'll paste that in. Okay, and you'll notice as well, I've got HD user at localhost. I could just do that as Ubuntu, just the same. In fact, let's just see what happens here as I do that. Okay, am I sure? Yes, I am sure. Okay, and we'll put in my password, which is our HD user, if you recall. Good. All right. So we've added HD user at Ubuntu to our list of available users that can log in through SSH. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do here is I can do one of two things. I can do an SSH Ubuntu or SSH localhost. Right now, SSH Ubuntu is this machine. So as we develop out, as we add more machines, then we're going to have different names, of course. So let's just give it a shot and see what happens when we do that. We'll do SSH Ubuntu. Okay, it tells us we're into Ubuntu. And if we run our local host, it should do the same thing because localhost is always the current computer. So let's find out. What it's doing here is it's saying this, it says, hey, I don't recognize that IP address. Can I add it? And I'm going to say yes so that it doesn't ask us about that anymore. And if I do, and it also, you notice here, if I press up, right? Normally, if I press up, the up arrow, it would give me the last command. But this is the last command that was run on on local host, not on Ubuntu. Although they are the same thing, it literally passes around the secure communications to another computer. So if I was on another computer, I'd be actually running commands that I ran last on that computer. It gets a little confusing, but we still are doing it. Okay, so let's do a reboot here. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to install is rsync. Now rsync is kind of already installed. However, Apache recommends that we add it anyway. I'm just going to do it just for the sake of having it. You'll see in the Apache documentation, it would be right here. Okay. We've also done something different with SSH. There we installed the server version, and it maybe rsync is already installed with that. I've never really looked into it, but something to consider. Okay, so we're going to log in as HD user again. Now the next step, as I mentioned here, is going to grab our rsync install, and just to recall, it probably is already installed, but we're gonna go through that motion anyhow. So let's run that command for installing rsync. And again, we're likely to see that it's already been installed, but let's just go for it. Okay, reading packages, dependencies, state, already at the newest version, so we're totally fine. We don't need to worry about that one at all. Okay, excellent. Now, the next stage here is we're going to install our Hadoop. Okay. Now, if you are looking for Hadoop installs, there's a variety of them right here. Uh, some of the older videos that I did were 7.4 and 7.3. You can use whatever version you choose. Just to understand some of the nuances between the installs. Some versions, they have a habit of changing settings and deprecating one, and then all of a sudden your Hadoop installation doesn't work. So in the process here, this first step is going to download Hadoop version 9.0, which is the current version, and place it into downloads/Hadoop. Okay, that's in our HD user. So I'm going to paste that command in, run it, and now it's downloading it. And what you're going to see, if I go into File Manager here, you'll see in the Downloads folder a nice and neat Hadoop folder. And there's our tar file that's being downloaded right now. So that's going to take just a little bit of time, so I'll do a little more explanation on some of the next steps. All right, so the next step that we're going to be working on here is it's going to take that tar file and extract the file, okay, into the folder called usr/local, okay. Once it does that, you'll see that it'll produce a folder with that name right there. It's basically the name of the tar file, okay. That doesn't, once again, it doesn't look like it's very generic, and with this type of install, it's nice to consider making things a little more generic. So we'll go back in here, check our progress. All right. Okay, so we've fully downloaded Hadoop. Once again, it's right there in our downloads folder. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so we're going to now extract our file. And that's going to create a folder in USR local, and you'll see that it will currently be Hadoop 2.9 right there. Okay. From that point, we're going to, after we've finished our extraction, we're going to then change that folder name so that it says just says Hadoop, make it more generic, so we're not version dependent on that. Okay, so we've extracted. Let's now change we're going to rename our folder name. And what this folder or this command does is it says move any folder with the alias or the wildcard of Hadoop -star and rename it to Hadoop. So you could be in danger in this case if you had more than one Hadoop folder. We only have one in this case. And you'll notice now that it's now renamed as Hadoop. Okay. All right. Now next part, we're going to create some local bash variables. Now, just like I did earlier with the Java install, You can edit the bash RC yourself, or and just paste these variables in, or you can run this command. Now this time I'm going to run the command because it's a little quicker. So go like that, paste it in. Now just to show you what it actually did here, I'm going to show you how that what it actually uh, produced. Okay, if I go down to the bottom, you'll see that it created these nice little Hadoop variables for us. A good thing to do is to, when you're adding variables like that, surround them with start and end tags. That way, if you need to delete them programmatically, you can use them as delimiters, and they're easy to find. But without them, it's very difficult to remove them, and that can be a big challenge later on. So we'll close up our bash RC file. Let's go back down. Now, there's a couple things, another new thing that I decided I would throw in here, and it is basically for instantiating environment variables. Now, we could do this, we could have done this with a few other files that we've done so far, but I thought I would give you an opportunity to see how that works in action. So when we added these files to our bash RC, we added a Hadoop home, okay? And what you're going to see is that currently Hadoop home has no value because it doesn't exist in the system yet, okay? It is in the bash RC file, but that bash RC hasn't been run. So what we now need to do is instantiate that file by using source /dot bash rc, and that again, that bash rc file is up in our home folder, Control H, okay, and it's right there. All right. So by the way, that's what tilde stands for. It stands for your home folder. All right, so we've instantiated those variables. If I go up two commands and run that Hadoop home, now I have the variables that I executed. Okay, wonderful. And you can see that's exactly what it produced. All right. Now, the other way to instantiate variables, of course, is to just simply do a reboot. And I'm sometimes a little bit more of a fan of a reboot. The reason is you may be appending variables during your instantiation process, and if that process gets instantiated a few times, then you may, in fact, you double up on the variables that are in your path variable, for example. The reboot will only do it once, and you won't end up with that problem. Let's log in one more time here. So we've got a few more logins to do because we will be restarting and stopping our system a few times just to make sure that our variables are up to date. Let's go down and check out what our next steps are here. Okay. We tested our Hadoop home variables. Now what we're going to do is just do some preparation before we actually install. We've got our Hadoop installation ready. Now what we have to do is actually get our prepare some data directories so that when Hadoop does its work, we're going to make that data available to this user. So this user being HD user, we're going to push it into that user. So let's go ahead and make a copy here. And once again, this is going to create 3 folders. Okay, we have a name node, data node, and temp. Okay, go over here. We'll paste that. There we have it. Okay, so what that did is created a Hadoop data folder for us. Okay, and it is right here, our Hadoop underscore data, our HDFS, name node, data node, or temp folder. Okay. Now, one of the things that that happened when we extracted the files into our USR local Hadoop folder is we extracted it with our user credentials. I'm going to return the credentials back to root. Okay. And the reason is because I kind of like applications to have that user credential. That way, prevent permissions are back to defaults. Okay. Now the other thing that we're going to have to do is set the Hadoop home folder to kind of wide open here. We're giving it read-write access to everything. Now this can be a little unsafe, and I've struggled with a few of these things just in a base level installation like this, trying to decide what's the best way to manage this. And without getting too complicated, we're just going to set this open so that we can kind of do our jobs, run it, and just play around with it a little bit. So we're just going to set it wide open so that that Hadoop has the ability of making changes and adding files and things like that. The next thing we're going to do is edit the Hadoop environment shell file. So I'm going to use this command to open that file. Okay. And in particular, you're going to find this Java home export. Okay. Now you see here the obvious thing is that this should be using the Java home environment variable that we used earlier. For whatever reason, it doesn't, and there's probably some way of fixing that problem. I have not found that yet, and I've had more people tell me it doesn't exist, but somehow I'm on a quest to find that it does. So we're going to make a hard-coded change. Okay, so we comment out the old Java home entry, and we hard code in our Java entry that we know we actually have an install at. Okay. All right. Now, if you don't know your Java SD or so your JDK location, you can just do an echo Java underscore home, and it'll tell you. Okay. All right. Let's close that up. Okay. Now, there's a couple other things that you may want to know as well. If you need to find your local DNS, you can just type echo $host name, and in this case, we've called this computer Ubuntu, so we'll type out Ubuntu. I'm not going to do that right now, but if you need to know that, because you will need to know it for some of the configurations. Next thing we're going to open up is the core site XML file. We'll copy that code, and that will just do a sudo get it. Okay. In this configuration area, we now take the configuration XML, and we're going to paste that over top of what's there. Okay. Done. Save that. Close it. And we move forward. Okay. Now that file, by the way, it tells us it tells Hadoop where things are found. So for instance, our temp folder that we created earlier, it just tells it, hey, this is where we're storing the temp information. Our default FS, that's our file system, is on the local host machine at port 9000. That's very standard port for using our FS file system. Next thing, we're going to load up yarn site XML, and we'll go into that one, and we're going to do the same process. We're going to just take the XML file from here and move it over. There's a couple things here that you may need to know. Just auxiliary services for MapReduce is called MapReduce underscore shuffle, and it's just one of those recommended properties to set. The other one to set is your job tracker location, which is localhost colon with a port of 9001. Okay, another good one to have set up. Okay, some of this stuff you actually don't need to worry about, but for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to work when you don't. So I'm gonna just keep going with the theme. Okay, we'll go down. Now, the next one here, this is a little more tricky. With MapReduce Site, what we have to do, it gives us a template file. Okay, it's a mapreduce.xml.template, and we're going to create a copy of that file and name that copy as an XML file. Okay, and there we have that. And if you want to see what's actually going on here, if you remember, we go into our local, then Hadoop, and then let's see, etc Hadoop. That's where all these files are that I'm doing. The one I just created is right here, and you'll notice it's got a lock on it. Okay, that's an important note because we used sudo to copy that file. So that file is not particularly accessible to us. So just a mental note. So that means we got to give the permissions to actually edit that file. Okay, and we just set it to 777. Okay, and now you'll notice that that lock is gone. Okay, so now let's edit the MapReduce site. Okay, we'll load that up. Copy this configuration over. Copy that. Super. Paste it. Save it. Close. All right. Now, a couple more changes here. I know it just keeps going on and on and on, but that is the name of the game. Eventually, they will get this down to a much finer art. Now we copy this configuration detail as well. Now eventually, once we move up to a clustered setup, we have our replication currently set up as 1, which means that's the computer we're on. We're setting our name node directory and our data node directories. These are the ones that we pointed to when we were setting up, when we were making the directory structure as well. So we'll paste that over, save it. All right, good. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is return ownership. Once more, it's there's most of the files we worked with were still root, but it's a good idea just to throw that back to the root and run that one command again to apply read-write access to all of the files as well. This is a little bit redundant, but I've run into more permissions issues when doing this install, and I find that this just gets us past the problems. So from this point, we're going to copy out, we're going to actually format our name node. So we run a format command from Hadoop. Okay, and from here, we want to pay attention to whether there are any errors that come up during the formatting process. And what you'll see here, currently we're just showing the info, which is good. Couple warnings. Usually the warnings aren't particularly devastating, but there are certain things that you can check. It's just this one appears to be just saying that there was a bit of a lag time. you can make some changes in your timing to allow it to take some more time to load. Okay, good. Now let's just do a reboot. Once again, it's not necessary, but one of those things that I like to do just to make sure that we are kind of working with fresh environment variables. Okay, so now what we are is we're now rebooted, and we're going to log into our HD user one more time. Um, we've fully installed and formatted our Hadoop cluster. You can see this is a really brutal process. It takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of steps, and a lot can go wrong. Once we are up and running, however, we can make changes to our configurations that are not going to uh, break everything. And of course, if we are being smart, we can take snapshots of our progress. We didn't do that too much in this process because I really wanted to try to focus on getting the job done rather than worrying about backtracking right now. But I would definitely recommend that every time you plan to reboot, take a snapshot of your progress, and you'll find that you won't come up with a lot of failing points. So the next step, we're going to start up our DFS. Okay, and our DFS is our distributed file system. That's now we're actually working on the Hadoop cluster. So this cluster is again, it's just working on a single node, so it's not really doing a lot of parallel processing, but it is doing something. So inner process here is this takes a little bit of time, and hopefully if we set up everything right at this point, we should have something working. And it takes a little bit of time at this time because you know it's running for the first time as well. So pay very close attention to these log outputs. Once you're up and running, you'll want to double check those logs to make sure there were no problems. And we're going to do that in a moment once we have it up and going. Um, when the DFS starts, it now will have a server, a web server running in the background that will allow us to log in and check out the health of the system. This command here is asking us for the secondary name nodes. Well, there is no secondary name node in here, so we can safely just say yes, because it's just going to add the security footprint to our known host file, so that it won't ask again, and it'll just move forward the next time it comes up. In the process, while this is loading up, I'm going to load up Firefox here, and once we've loaded up Firefox, I can I can log in to our DFS website, and it will tell us all kinds of nice information about that. By the way, if you look on my website here, we can now find that we have this link, okay, localhost port 50070. You're going to be able to take that web address, and we're going to go into Firefox. It didn't load up for me. I guess I didn't push the button hard enough. So we're going to wait for that to load up. Now, once it's loaded up, we're going to log into that website and double check a couple of things. What we should see, if everything loaded up correctly with our DFS, we should see one live node, and then we go into our log files, and we should see no trouble in our log files as well. Okay, go in there, paste and go. And we should see a nice website that looks like this. If we scroll down to the bottom, we see that we have one live node. If we go into the live nodes, it tells us a little more information about the node itself. And if you choose to dig in and understand more about it, you can feel free to do that. if we look at the utilities and go to logs, we now have these logs that were just created. Okay, let's take a look at the name node log. And this was the sort of blurred out that it gave us when it was producing that file, and or when it was doing the startup process. Okay, and that's all the information that we needed to know. What we would be really concerned about is if there was any error messages in here. If there was, and it does happen, then we need to deal with the error message. Typically at this stage, you're going to find that it's mostly error messages that are related to permissions. So from what I can see, these are all info. And again, you know, what you can see here is that it produces a lot of information and it's almost too much information. So you can take away some of that by changing the log mode, and you can tell it I only want to see errors, not warnings or any of the information stuff. So those are all good pieces to pay attention to as well. Okay. All right. Now we're in our final stages here. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to start up our yarn and our job history tracker. Okay. They're just two last little details that we're going to see, and hopefully if everything is done what it's supposed to, we will be in great shape. And it looks like we are. Now, what we will also want to do, the final step here, is we're going to just check our Java processes that are running, and we should see about 5 or 6 of them. I believe there's about 5 of them. Yeah, here we go, 6. So we have Node Manager, Resource Manager, JPS, Secondary Name Node, and Data Node. Those are the ones that you should see. Your process numbers will be slightly different, but you can see in my list here, I do have those sitting there available. Now, the next thing we're going to do, and this is our final step, everything will be done in our video, and it looks like I took a lot longer than a half an hour, but this will be very rewarding once you're done. So we're going to copy these commands. This command here is going to create a file for us on our local storage. Okay, our local storage is, let's see if I can pull up our file manager. That's our home folder, and we just created this folder called file called my file. Okay, very easy. Now the next thing, we're going to list off the files that are in our DFS. Okay, and currently there should be nothing there because we just formatted. It should be entirely blank. All right. Now just remember the HDFS on this machine is quite slow because we only have one processor, a limited amount of RAM, and but if you have a stronger computer with more resources, you're going to find it's a whole lot faster. Okay. We now are going to create a directory called user on the HDFS. Now watch what happens here. I'm going to go into the browser as well, back over to that site for our DFS, and I can go to the utilities menu and click browse file system. Okay, once it registers that the file system is there, you're going to see in just a second that the user folder is actually there. And let's see, there we go. Just took a little bit of time to come up. And this is all the statistics about our user folder. All right, the next step, we're going to just do a list. We kind of just did a list, but we're going to run these commands anyway, just because it's a good exercise for us to understand how the whole process works. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to copy that file that we created earlier. We're going to copy it a few times onto the DFS from our local system. Okay, and if you notice that list that we just did now shows that we have one one folder says that's called user, just like we saw on our DFS webpage. Okay, so now we're copying over those files, and it takes a little bit of time. Once again, there is a process that it has to go through to get to convert it from our local system into the Hadoop HDFS format. So it does take a little bit of time. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to the directory browser on the website. I'm going to go into that user folder, and now you can see so far I've copied over 2 files, and they're right there on the list. If I copy that a third time, you're going to see in just a moment I'm going to go back over to Firefox and refresh, and I'm going to see that file should be there. Okay, there we have it. 3 files sitting right there. Excellent. We're in the final stages, guys. So here in the last stage, I'm not going to worry about displaying files here. That's fine. We already know that they're there from the utility. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove those files. Okay, we don't need them there, so we'll just delete them. And this is going to delete anything that's called my file. Okay. And if we go back here and do a refresh, you're going to see that now these files are gone. Okay, so that process is done. The last thing, remove our user directory. Okay, boom, got that out of the way. Okay, now you notice here we're in the user directory, so that's not going to give us that's not going to work for us. If I push refresh right now, it's probably going to tell us that there's a problem. Yeah, right. So I just delete that, press go, and now we should be good to go. Let's just refresh here. Okay, good. We're ready to go. We're fine. We don't have any real issues with our file system, and we've now proved that everything works. So from this web page that I have brought everybody to, you can go like crazy with all of the HDFS commands that are available to Apache Hadoop. That will be it for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. It's going to be helpful for a lot of you that can bear with a 30 some odd minute install. I think it actually took almost 40 minutes, but it's pretty exciting. And then the next stage, we'll start installing some other technologies on top of it. We'll get our Hive installed and probably a few other exciting parts. But remember to like and share, and please subscribe to my channel. I always like interacting with people and love hearing what you have to say about the videos. It's really beneficial, and hopefully the more constructive discussion you can give me, the better these videos can get for you. So good luck and take care and have an amazing day. Bye-bye.